Welcome to the TLGS 2022 conference. My name is Wendy Doucette from East Tennessee State University. I'll be collecting questions in the chat for this session, which is called Information Literacy Curriculum Mapping for Graduate Students.
Jana, you are muted.
I apologize for that. I hit the button, but it didn't register. Hi, everybody. I'm so happy to be here. I'd like to thank the conference organizers for allowing me to present today. My name is Jana Schellinger, and I'm the Health Sciences Librarian at Emory and Henry College in Southwest Virginia. So Emory and Henry is a small liberal arts college. We've added health science graduate programs to our offerings over the last several years, so I'm assigned to work with all of these programs, including physical therapy, occupational therapy, the physician assistant, and nursing programs. I also work with a couple of health-related undergraduate programs and a few of the graduate programs that we have that are not health-related, such as education and business. So before I get really into my presentation, I wanted to let you know that my occupational therapy students have been very needy over the last few weeks. They've been working on literature reviews for their capstone projects, and I believe in the last month, I've spent over 50 hours working with these students. One of those weeks was the students' spring break. So, in actuality, I spent probably a week and a half of the last 3 weeks working with the occupational therapy students. Not that I mind, because that's what I love to do, but that's a lot. And it hasn't really allowed me much time to do any other tasks. So, I'm going to come back to this a little later as it really ties in nicely to this presentation. So my objectives for today are to describe Emory and Henry Library's information literacy program, describe the creation of the program, talk about gaining buy-in from faculty, and the benefits and lessons that we've seen with the program. A bit of background on how the graduate curriculum mapping program came to be. So when the library director was hired about 3 years ago, she noted that students were graduating without having contact with the library or building their needed information literacy skills. And even the college administration knew this was a problem. So as a librarian, she searched the literature for ideas to combat this. And our director is a big fan of workshopping a problem. So she brought the issue to her team of librarians, and they began by working on a skill map for undergraduate students. They created a list of skills, broke them down into manageable lessons, and then the lessons were assigned to different librarians to create. Of course, the pandemic slowed down their progress, but they continue to implement the plan across the undergraduate program. Fast forward a year, and I was hired. Since I'm the only librarian assigned to work with our graduate students, I was asked to create a similar plan for our graduate programs, both in and out of our health sciences programs. Now, I had planned lessons in prior librarian positions, but most were on a case by case basis, and I'd never mapped and standardized lessons on this level. So my first step was to imagine our graduate students upon completion of their programs. I brainstormed and wrote down the information literacy skills we wanted them to graduate with. Some of the information literacy skills we wanted them to have including finding sources, conceptualizing a search using PICO, narrowing and expanding their searches, basic searching, applying evidence to a clinical question, navigating the library, and evaluating resources. I listed out the skills and then grouped them to help create learning outcomes. These were a few of my learning outcomes. So students will be able to successfully find and access the library, request assistance, and request materials through interlibrary loan. Students will demonstrate use of Zotero to create citations and manage sources, and students will be able to create a question using Pico and Boolean operators. I then grouped the learning outcomes where appropriate to create lessons. And then for each lesson, I created a lesson plan. This is a list of lessons I wanted the students to have. I wanted them to have an orientation, information about subject searching basics, research organization, including Zotero, advanced searching, research planning, selecting and evaluating resources. And then for our health sciences students, I wanted them to have a lesson on answering a clinical question. And because I like making my life as difficult as possible, I codified the ACRL framework with all the knowledge, practices, and dispositions, and then mapped each skill to that framework. Here's the look at one of my lesson plans for the basic searching class. And that's the second page of that lesson. This was the master map I created. Each dark line is a separate lesson. Each lesson has a maximum of 2 student learning outcomes, and each learning outcome has skills that we want the students to develop. To the right side are the codes we created from the ACRL framework. One of my goals with this was to have each of the frames of the ACRL framework represented in at least one of these lessons. So going back to the lesson plans, since we're a small library with a small staff of about 5 librarians total, I wrote out the lesson plans for each lesson and put them into a shared drive so everyone would be able to access them. There were areas of the lessons, such as searches or examples, that could be customized to add the presenter's flair or to better fit the particular class. All of our librarians familiarize themselves with the lessons. That way, if I inevitably get sick or go on vacation, any of the other librarians can step in and take my place teaching a class relatively easily. Each of the lessons involved active learning, often in groups. Whenever I could arrange for the students to teach themselves and the rest of the class, that's what I did. Because let's be honest, nobody wanted to sit there and listen to me talk to them for an hour. So for example, in the basic searching lesson, I have each student create their own research question. The questions should be clear, focused, concise, complex, and arguable, and I define all of those terms. Then I have the students pair up and evaluate each other's question to make sure they meet those criteria. They work as a pair to create keywords for each of their questions, and then they run some preliminary searches through our library database. They determine from there if they need to narrow or expand their questions. So at each step, I check in with the groups and ask them to share their research questions, keywords, and the number of results they found. And if there's an aspect of the question that I think they need to think about, such as a location, like whether they're looking at the United States or worldwide, or a population group that they're focusing on, then I'll make some suggestions or ask some questions about their topic. Each of our lessons has some sort of assessment at the end. I used LibWizard to create the assessments. And I also created LibGuides for each lesson that housed the assessment and a little bit of relevant content so that if the students wanted to, they could go back and review what they learned after the class. At that point, I really felt accomplished. I thought I could relax and breathe a bit after a job well done. But that was not to be. That's when my director gave me a brand new challenge. So we all learned a whole lot and changed how we did things during the pandemic. Going online definitely presented some unique challenges, and we all learned about asynchronous and online teaching. Because of this, my director tasked me with creating online asynchronous modules that could be used in place of the synchronous lessons in the classroom. She wanted the library to have some flexibility in the way we presented lessons, and she wanted to provide the faculty with options for including the lessons in their curriculum. She wanted each online lesson to be interactive, include an assessment, provide meaningful data, and be created from multiple learning objects. And these learning objects are small pieces of lessons that can be combined to create one lesson and then recombined to create a different lesson if needed. Each learning object teaches a different skill or concept and has its own assessment. I brought several iterations of lessons to her, and we went back and forth about the merits of each of them. None of them were what she was really looking for. And if I was honest, she was right. They stunk. They were boring and they were not engaging. But I was used to just recording an online Zoom with a PowerPoint for an hour long at that time. So by the time I recreated my first lesson about 5 or 6 times, I was getting a little bit frustrated. So I recognized I was going to have to get creative. Either that or I just got a little bit goofy in my frustration. So the first module I tackled was our basic searching module. In the in-person session, as I said earlier, students created a research question, determined keywords, learned basic search skills, and briefly learned how to expand and narrow their searches. So one day I was sitting there thinking, wouldn't it be silly if I based my basic searching lesson on the zombie apocalypse? I provided a scenario where the students would need to be able to find reliable information about how to survive the apocalypse. I liked it, and miraculously, so did my supervisor. So I used that same creative approach for my other lessons. Here's an example of one of my other lessons. Hopefully you'll be able to hear this okay.
We are unable to hear the video.
I was worried that might be the case, but fortunately you were able to read the captions on the pages, and hopefully you were able to get a little bit about what this particular lesson was about. So let me back that up real quick. For the assessment piece of this module, there are multiple choice questions asking students to identify what inclusion and exclusion criteria are. And then I provide a list of articles, the titles, and ask the students to select the 6 articles that are most likely to be relevant to the research question in the video about cat vocalizations. Once my online modules were ready, my next task was to sit down with the department chairs and have a discussion with them about including these lessons in their programs. My goal was to implement the program with 2 departments each year. I picked 2, our physical therapy and mental health counseling. Mental health counseling was brand new, and physical therapy was working on their reaccreditation. So I presented the idea to them, saying that we wanted to make sure the students graduated with their essential information literacy skills. We said we were sure that they were covering these skills in their lectures, but we were offering them the chance to take a lecture off and let us cover those lessons. And this would add some collaborative learning to their classes. And then we were also ensuring consistency within all of the graduate programs. The department chairs I spoke to were in favor of our plan and were working on inserting our lessons into the curriculum. We added the courses to the lesson plans, and the department chairs and department members signed off on the plan. So we have something semi-official to be able to look at and evaluate our program. I've also spoken to several other professors about the plan, and they are already integrating some of the lessons into their classes. The preliminary data from the assessments in these lessons shows that the students are learning the lessons that I'm provided. So I'm very excited about that. So some of the lessons that we learned in implementing this program. First, this is not an easy program to implement. Deciding on lessons and outcomes, mapping them to the ACRL framework may be one of the easier tasks I did for this project, but it definitely was not easy. The creative process involved is definitely also not easy. I'm still creating lessons on other topics for other programs, and it takes quite a bit of time to think through each aspect of the lessons and assessments and then create them. Getting buy-in from the faculty was also not the easiest thing in the world. I'm not really a fan of sitting down with program chairs. I tend to get a little bit nervous. And so talking to them and presenting the idea was somewhat difficult for me. Working out the timing for these lessons was also a little bit difficult because, of course, we wanted the students to have the lessons and learn the skills at a time where they could apply them in their regular classes. I'm fortunate that much of my faculty came from clinical settings, and the School of Health Sciences is fairly new. So it's easier for me to say, let me help you, and for them to accept the offer. I would suggest that if you want to do something like this, it's helpful if you develop a good rapport with the department chairs and then target the discussion at a time when they may be more receptive to the changes, like when a new program director starts, which we're doing in our physician assistant program, or when a program is preparing for reaccreditation, which our occupational therapy program will be doing in the next couple of years. In my case, the school had looked for a health sciences librarian for almost a year, and everyone was so excited to have me on board. So I think that also created some openness between me and our department chairs. In the end, I feel like all of the work was worth it. When it's fully implemented into all of our programs, student information literacy skills will be standardized across the curriculum. This sort of plan helps to eliminate gaps and redundancies. I know exactly how the lessons fit together, so I'm not teaching the same thing to the same group of students multiple times. And the faculty members also know what we're going to cover, so they don't repeat a lesson as well. Since we have the lessons planned out, it's decreasing instruction development duties in the long term. Obviously, it's pretty front loaded with development duties, but I anticipate that I shouldn't have to redo the lessons unless they need to be updated, and that they will need to be updated every couple of years. I'm hoping that I won't be redoing them all at the same time. And then this program also ensures someone else can fill in if I'm absent one day. That gives me peace of mind if I'm sick, and allows me the freedom to actually take off. But it also gives the other librarians peace of mind knowing that they won't have to come in and develop a lesson in a couple of hours right before they have to teach it for a program that they're not familiar with. This program also offers flexibility for our faculty in the library. If there's, say, a global pandemic, we have prearranged options for moving everything online and providing the same quality of education that we would provide in person. The faculty also have flexibility to teach the concepts themselves or have us teach the content, either in person or through the online modules. I also have some faculty members who are using the online modules to reinforce things that they're learning in class. Finally, we believe that a program like this is generalizable to other colleges and universities within their different academic programs. My online learning objects were based on the concepts from the article Guidelines for Authors of Learning Objects by Rachel Smith. So I hope to implement this plan with our occupational therapy department next. Remember all of the hours I spent in the last few weeks working with my occupational therapy students? I feel like the 50 plus hours I spent with them could have been substantially decreased if I had provided one or two of these lessons to the students prior to their capstone project. Fortunately, the project's due today, so my appointment schedule should slow down a little bit, at least until the next project is coming due. Thank you so much for listening to this presentation, and thanks to the conference organizers for allowing me to present. And I am happy to answer any questions at this time.
I don't want to take a question if someone's going to ask it, but Emory and Henry is where I worked before I came here. So I am wondering, is there a plan to roll this out at the undergrad level also?
Yes, actually, they started that plan before I came and started doing the graduate program. So they are currently working on implementing it with all of the core 100 classes, which are the how to do college classes, and English 101. And they're going to be adding on different programs each year for the next several years.
And we have two questions from Jenny, who I know is herself a health sciences librarian. Jenny is asking, what resources do you have that you're willing to share? And also, how are you assessing the asynchronous modules?
So I'm going to reverse those. The asynchronous modules are being assessed with questions and answers, usually multiple choice within LibWizard. Each different learning object has its own assessment attached to it. And all of the recordings are available on our YouTube channel. So anybody has the ability to go in and take a look at it. But it also, if you wanted to contact me, I'm happy to provide any information that you're interested in about any of these programs. And I'll put my email address in the chat.
Okay. And I'm also wondering, what tool did you use to create the interactive modules, and what training did you give the other librarians?
So the tool that I used as far as creating the visuals was primarily Canva. I recorded everything with, Canva as well. I loaded them into YouTube, and then I did the captioning for each of the videos there. And as far as training the other librarians, during some of our faculty meetings within like the summer term, we go over these different modules repeatedly so that each person knows exactly what the lessons contain. Also, they have the lesson plans that are accessible to them so they can look them over at any time if they feel like they need a refresher. Luckily, I'm not on vacation very often and I'm not sick very often, so nobody's actually had to step in for me.
Okay, there's also a comment that wondering if anyone had asked you for more academic examples rather than cats and the zombie apocalypse.
Nobody's really asked for that. I get a little bit more academic in some of the others, but I really wanted to give them something that I thought would hold their interest. And so we're really focused on trying to give them something that's a little bit unique. I figure that their teachers are going to have them doing the academic work. So I wanted to give them a little bit of fun when learning the basic skills.
And also, are the videos embedded in LibWizard, and what is the process for students?
The videos are embedded in LibWizard. So what we do is we send a link to the module to the faculty member. They put it in, we use Moodle, so they put it in Moodle for their learning management system. And then the students can just click on at their convenience and watch the videos and also answer the questions. I have some of the faculty using the online modules as a supplement to their regular teaching to give the students a different perspective, or just using the online modules or having me come into the classroom.
And I have a question about that. Are they required part of the assignments, or are they optional, or does it depend on the instructor?
So each LibWizard module prints off a certificate of completion, and if the professor wants, they can collect those certificates of completion from the students. We leave that up to them about whether they want the students to turn in the evidence. I'm guessing that the students will have some trouble with some of their other assignments, like their lit reviews, if they don't do the work. So I'm hoping that that will reinforce for the professors exactly who has and who hasn't done the work if they don't get the certificates.
Okay. And are you able to run a report on LibWizard on the students to determine those stats?
Yes, we can run a report. It doesn't have any identifying information for the students. We keep it within the library, but we can give some generalizations to the professors about how the students did with the tasks. But again, we believe that the evidence of them learning the skill will show itself as they move forward in their program.
Okay, and does each program have their own link to the same module?
At this time, all of the programs are using the same link to the same module, and we're collecting all of the data together. But for each class, we do ask who the professor was, so that if we want to break it down by program, we're able to do that.
Okay, people are commending you for all the work that you did on this, and I second that. If anyone has any more questions for Jana, she is here. You can private message her, or you can contact her after. I think we're going to call this session done. Thank you very much, Jana, and we'll have a
Thank
minute
you.
or so while we set up for the next session.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone.